Hello SGD, I'm working more into Heliopolis and looking at some deeper connections to there and building on this, well, lots of research in regards to this. But now, why do I show this image? This is an image of Mary, Jesus, and Joseph fleeing to Egypt. Now that brings us to this shows the walls of Heliopolis, this most sacred of ancient centers, and what we have down here is the virgin tree of Heliopolis. Now I'm going to put some links in the description. So there we see that's the virgin tree there in Heliopolis, current day Cairo. I'll drop a bunch of links in the description. We see the famous Virgin's tree, and I'll put links in there. Virgin's tree as it looked fairly recently, and it's this very sacred and ancient site for Christians, also for Muslims, because there's a mosque near there. But that brings us, firstly, let's look at the tree of life. The tree of life is, you'll see it in so many different variations and perspectives, and so it's very, very important in all sorts of, especially Hermetic cult type of ways in Judaism, Christianity, even mentioned in Islam. You'll find it in the Hermetic tradition. Alchemists will be connected to it, Judaism as well. So many different formats for it and different versions of this tree of life. Very important feature. So again, in Kabbalah, all sorts of variations of it. Also, Yggdrasil could be, that's a very similar theme with this tree of life and this geometry. For instance, this was Frater Akat 418. Nice connections there. But tree of life, so that's current day Heliopolis Materia in Cairo. And there we see, this is on Balsam Street. Now, there are 4 streets surrounding that area of a virgin tree, the balsam tree, but it's a sycamore. Now, we'll go into that. So, according to the Bible, so shortly after Jesus' birth, the Magi, the 3 wise men, Magi as in magic, so you'll find also in the Old Testament the priests of the Pharaoh were the Magi, or the magicians. Now, the 3 Magi appeared in the Bible. They followed the star birth of Jesus, and they warned Joseph and Mary, get out of town, Herod's going to kill him. And so they fled to Egypt. So from Jerusalem they fled to Egypt. Now, where did they go? Matthew 2, let me get that up a little bit. Okay, Matthew 2, 13 to 23 describes, rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there till I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child and destroy him. So the Magi is very strong connection to the magicians, the priests of Egypt. You'll also find in the Old Testament, for instance, Joseph and the 7 years of plenty, 7 years of drought. He became the vizier of Egypt, and he married the daughter of the high priest of Heliopolis, or On, O-N, in the Bible. You'll also see Heliopolis and the destruction of the obelisks of Heliopolis, which is so important, described in the Bible. So Matthew 2:13 to 23. It's also mentioned in the apocryphal texts as well. Nice connection too. But here's a screenshot. So this is a picture of some Christians on the, or maybe not even Christian, because it's for Islam as well, Mary as well. So Mary, Joseph, and Jesus fled to Egypt, and they rested under this sacred tree, Mary's tree. Now, the tree which is there now is planted from a cutting from the 1600s. The tree has been replanted in various forms, but the reason I show that picture is because we get to see, move this up a little bit, we get to see, so we can place that tree as well, and there we see the minaret, or the tower, and there we get a placement. So it's in this area, that's on Balsam Street, Al Balsam Street in Israel there, so we can get a because I was trying to find the location of it using Google Earth, Google Maps. Maybe I was typing in the wrong name, but we get the location of it there. So Heliopolis, city of the sun, Iunu, or On, is also called in the Bible, and where the virgin tree was planted. This is So in that square we see here, that's the open air museum of Heliopolis now, and so there are up to 48 obelisks in Heliopolis. It's because it's not a grand looking site anymore. It's completely ignored for the most part. But we have what is possibly the oldest surviving obelisk, true obelisk, and that's carved and dedicated to Senesret I. There we see a better picture of the obelisk and get its location there in this open air museum right there in the very centre. This area, recent geophysical survey has confirmed the existence of the mound. That is the Benben, the gods of the Ennead, etc., according to the creation story mentioned in the Coffin Texts, Book of the Dead, so many other texts as well. This is an older painting, and again we see, so obelisks of Heliopolis were either relocated across the world. You'll find them in London, New York, Rome, Florence. But whether this was left standing from the time of Cambyses or whether it was re-erected during an earlier period, hard to pin that down. But we see the surviving obelisk of Heliopolis. Now that picture's relevant because this is a classical. Now this is not by no means an ancient picture. Neither was the previous one. But we see the obelisk there and Mary's tree. Now we get it's very, very close. It's about 1 kilometre away is a virgin tree, Mary's tree. So that was where Mary rested with the child as they fled from Egypt. Now, according to there's a well connected there, so they needed water, and a well miraculously appeared. There's a mosque called Mary's Well just right next door as well. But okay. The older pictures of the Virgin Tree, and again we see it, so that's the location of it there in regards to the Tree of Life. Here's another older picture of it as well. It again goes back, replanted in the 1600, going back to the early Coptics. This was a sacred site of pilgrimage. Pilgrims have come here to take cuttings, to take bark, to take leaves. I'll drop links in the description, very, very, very well recorded. So okay, I'm sure I've got more. Let me close that for a second. Okay, the Seshat tree. Now, there is more because, so we have Matthew 2, chapter 13 to 23. Flee to Egypt. Again, this is a classical image. Now you see Karnak or Luxor there in the background, but the Mary and Joseph fleeing to Egypt is traditional. So this is what the tree looks. Well, it was in about 2001. This is about 2010, but it has regrown since then. But why it is important, because we have the sacred Ished tree of Heliopolis. Now, they're all sacred trees. Acacia would be used for coffins, would be connected to Horus, but the Ished tree, or the sycamore, there was a sacred tree, and the sacred Ished tree of Heliopolis was, well, the most sacred of sacred trees. And so as the legend goes, Mary rested underneath this tree and suckled the child. Now, according to ancient Egyptian stories, Horus was suckled by Isis underneath the shade of the Ished tree at Heliopolis, this most sacred of sacred trees. And this is just one example of, so in the Book of the Dead we see the 10 Commandments, with references to Heliopolis. Now, Imhotep, the high priest of Heliopolis, the chief of scribes, the chief of architects, he was the high priest of Heliopolis. He presided over a 7-year famine. Joseph, who was married to the daughter of the high priest of Heliopolis according to the Old Testament, and the vizier, just like Imhotep, was the high priest of Heliopolis, architecture, scribes, and these things. Now, I'm going to get more into that this is just a one-off, because lots of stuff on Heliopolis and in regards to this as the center of record keeping, and that is especially connected to this sacred sycamore, the turquoise of the sycamore trees. So this was so important, separate from acacia. Now we have Thoth and Seshat. They were the same. He was the male version, she was the female version. They were the god and goddesses of astronomy, architecture, geometry, accounting, writing, record keeping. And on this sacred Ished tree at Heliopolis, For instance, Seshat was the chief, was the lady of letters, the lady of the library, the lady of architecture. She recorded the pharaoh's deeds. She counted his time allotted on earth, and the sacred Ishad tree, the sycamore, which was the first tree to grow on the mound at Heliopolis, was the name of the pharaoh, and his deeds would have to be recorded on this tree. Heliopolis, and to a lesser extent Karnak, but especially Heliopolis, was the Hall of Records, was the seat of royal records. It's recorded in the Pyramid Texts, Coffin Texts, Book of the Dead. The Egyptians tell us this. And I'm going to go more into, because there's now a movement to try and locate the seat of records somewhere else. In the next videos, I'm going to go through these and tear it apart, essentially, because there are some very clear and exquisite records, especially in regards to Seshat and her place and her roles. So if they're going to use the Pyramid Texts, the Coffin Texts, and the Book of the Dead as a reference, well, be warned, because it's, why do they ignore these things? So Heliopolis was the center, was the seat of record keeping, the seat of royal records, the seat of astronomical records. It was the schools of geometry, philosophy, astronomy, music, and so those things connected with Thoth and with Seshat. Both of them are prior to the Old Kingdom. I'm going to go into the Palermo Stone, stretching the cord ceremony. Very long amount of records, but this is a one-off. The Tree of Life, the Tree of Record Keeping, the Tree of Creation, born on the mound from where Atum created, and the gods were born, and the point of creation in Lower Egypt, the land of the pyramids, the land of the Sphinx. Heliopolis was the center. Now, for instance, in the Book of the Dead, chapter 17, we see these depictions. The great cat beside whom the Eshed tree was split in Unu, that's Heliopolis, is Ra himself, called Cat when Sia said to him, it is how he is and what he has done. His name is become Cat or Mao. Meow. Now, these are many, many depictions of it, but the Cat of Heliopolis defends the Ishad tree, the sacred tree, from Apophis. This is Apophis, the sacred cat. The Cat of Heliopolis, but he defends from Apophis or Apet. And so what you'll see other descriptions. So on the solar bark, the solar boat, each night, beginning with Khepri, the scarab-faced god, the god of the morning sun, Horus or Ra, the god of the midday sun, and Atum, the god of the setting sun. The boat would set in the underworld, and each night Apophis, Apophis was he believed in a pure order, so creation caused duality and conflict and chaos in a sense. Apophis wanted pure order, and he disliked creation, and so each night he would attack the solar boat as it passed into the underworld. Each night it would have to be defended. This this life, was defended by the great cat of Heliopolis, Mao, and so this is a breed of cat called the Mao, originating in Egypt, and we also notice the pattern on there. We're going to get into more in there. It's a bit of onomatopoeia because cats go meow, and so another spelling is M-Y-W, meow, as well. So there's now this breed of cat, when exactly it was named, but there is a nice, why did the ancient Egyptians call it meow? Well, it's the sacred cat of Heliopolis, and connected to Seshat as well. It's also interesting to note the sacred Ishad tree, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge. All knowledge was encoded in this tree. It was the story of creation, and the past, present, future was embedded in this tree. And the serpent, the tree of knowledge, is also a Christian extension, or let's not say extension, at least a curious coincidence amongst us, the Book of the Dead and these other texts in biblical texts as well. But you also, as we're going to go into it in other episodes, I'm going to do it more scripted and detailed, and look into these facts, these well-recorded Egyptian facts, rather than relying on Edgar Cayce, essentially, which is not a source. Anyway, hope you enjoyed Tree of Life. Have a good